Here in Japan, you suddenly experience an extremely high level of quality. Osaka is traditionally, together with Kyoto, the cradle of innovation in Japan. Japan is also an extremely safe country. Sometimes in life, you have to be at the right place at the right time. We don't have gold, we don't have oil, we don't have diamonds. We have brains.
Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Dr. Felix Moesner, the Swiss consul to Japan in Osaka, but also the CEO of Swissnex, which is an initiative from the Swiss government to establish science consulates and foster innovation around the world, which is a fantastic initiative. And I've personally attended quite a few events already that you've led, which always regroup a lot of very interesting people. And I want to talk a little bit about how you got to do this. But before we talk about what you do at Swissnex and at the Swiss consulate, maybe a little bit of background. What brought you to Japan in the first place?
Well, I was a student at ETH in Zurich, and at the beginning it was actually probably you know the institution a little bit. You have to learn a lot of theoretical basics studies, and in this sense you really would like to see how this theory connects to reality. And I decided to take within the studies to take a gap year. And I was thinking what fits the best when you study electrical engineering. So I had a good way to have a possibility to do an internship. So I applied for a stipend with the Chamber of Commerce, and there were actually at that time 2 countries where you could do an internship in robotics, and this is what I really wanted to do at that time, back at that time. And so there were in this sense 2 countries. One was the US and the other one was Japan. And I thought, why not to dare something new, something very unknown, because somehow the US, from TV, it's kind of close mentally, maybe. Also
and culturally too, as well.
Culturally
right?
too. Somehow you can understand easier. So I said, why not to do the big adventure, and applied for an internship in Japan. So actually this was the way that brought me to Japan. Maybe it was a very good way to choose this, because at the beginning I thought if I would have had maybe a kind of a free choice to go there without having this internship, and maybe with the internship also some expectation that you go there and finish the internship, it would be easier to maybe not go. And somehow to have this package, also with the possibility to do something in the field of robotics, which I really wanted to experience much, much more at that time. So actually this was the pathway to go to Japan.
After your internship, you pursued your studies, you did a master's degree, and you went on to do a PhD in robotics, I believe.
Right.
And you did that in partnership with the University of Tokyo. So in my mind, PhD studies are, as you said, very theoretical, and you follow very specific scientific processes to do research and to gather data and to create something. Did you feel there was a different approach to do this kind of research when you were in Japan and at the University of Tokyo?
I don't think so, because when you do academic work in the research field, when you have to do some basics on the research side, and afterwards also to write the thesis around it. So it's basically the same if you would do it in Switzerland, in Japan, or in the US. It's maybe, if you look how you work in Japan in the lab. So it's like in a big family. So basically you're doing the research together. In the morning you come in, lunchtime you have lunch together, so everyone goes out and buys a bento and works very late into the night to achieve results. And obviously once a week you have these lab meetings where you present results. And maybe the difference there I would say is since it's in Japan and you have to present it in a way that your colleagues understand what you do, you have to be able to find a way to present it so that it's visually understandable. So actually this is something that I learned very early on, that if you really want to convey what you do, you also have to think how to present it visually so that your colleagues, your professor, your peers understand it in the lab. And
interesting. So you wouldn't necessarily exchange with them and just, even though you're all specialists in your field and all have a kind of a deep technical understanding of what you're doing, you wouldn't necessarily go straight for the deep technical discussion. You would try to, maybe not metaphorically, but really visually or in a simplified way, explain your research to others.
Yes, I mean, in my case, I very early started to take videos of the results. And I realized actually it was the fastest way to convey what you do. And it's not long videos, I mean, it's just clips, so 1 minute, 2 minutes, where the colleagues really see that actually, wow, this works. So at that time it was kind of very, very a narrow field of research. What I did was a transportation of tiny particles by electrostatic fields, and it's not so easy to see it, so you really have to zoom in order to see that it moves in the direction what you intend that it should move, and this was very easy to capture by video.
Really interesting. And you went on after your studies then to actually work at a large Swiss bank in Tokyo, leading the IT department. So quite a different route from the academic research that you were in just before. What kind of pushed this change? What made you want to move into an industry?
It's maybe the same thrive that I had when I decided to go to Japan. I really wanted to see the practical side of it. So when you do an academic career, so I was very close to, after the postdoc that I did back in Switzerland, actually to consider, should I go on the academic career or should I switch to the private sector? And for me, it was exactly that time when it's still possible to choose your career. So I was very intrigued to experience the private sector because I wanted to see how actually you add value. You add value to the company, you add value to the society, and actually this is the area which I really want to grasp as quick as possible. So that's why I like, maybe I'm also kind of an impatient person, so I really wanted to see how to get very quick insights. So I was working for a spin-off of Accenture, and with this I could look in various companies, and this also brought me back to Japan. So when I was working for a larger Swiss financial institution in Tokyo.
When we think financial institutions in Japan, a lot of stereotypes come to mind, such as very long hours, very long board meetings. Was it like this in your experience, or did you find it to be a completely different work environment than you may have expected before?
Of course, I mean, in the private sector, you have long working hours, but you also have a responsibility. For example, in that case, I was responsible for 50 staff in my team.
That's a big team.
It was a very big team and was still very young at that time. But on the other hand, you realize actually in the company you have different sections, you have different departments, and basically each department also has to see that actually that it's kind of defended. So I had to defend, for example, my staff because I was responsible for the IT. And like everywhere, it's very easy to complain on IT if something is not working. So I had a lot of interaction with all the departments to see what are the best solutions to deliver the best product at the end. So it was quite intensive, and of course from morning to the evening you had exchanges and really to find the best solution that at the end you can produce a result where the company is moving forward.
In terms of work culture as well, coming from a Swiss background but also an academic background, how was it then for you to transition to the industry and to kind of take on the challenge that you felt the desire to do, and then to actually be in the middle of it?
I think the younger you are, the easier it is. So yeah, it was not so wild to switch from the academic career to a private sector career. So I think looking back, it was quite straightforward, and most important is that you believe in yourself, and you also believe in the environment, and that you can, with the tools what you learned in the past and the experience what you gain daily, and that you can build up on this and really deliver at the end of the day. So I think, you have to have a sound self-confidence, but also be ready to deliver.
Eventually, after I think about a decade in the private sector, you decided to move again the field, and then you went into something more diplomatic. You started entering the Swiss consulate at the head of technology, I believe, technological development for the Swiss consulate in Japan, and then moved on to different consulates around the world. Swissnex in Boston, Swissnex in Beijing, and then finally to come open Swissnex in Osaka. How was this transition to move into a diplomatic role and kind of change again your career?
Yes, so actually there were a few steps in between. So I think the switch actually from the private sector into the, basically in the diplomatic world, which is also a part of bureaucracy, was maybe at the beginning not so obvious, because I really liked to, on a daily basis to produce results, and also to achieve step by step some hurdles and go through. But I saw with the time that communicating with all the departments within this big firm where I was working also drew a lot of energy from my side. And I realized actually that basically one element of my past I never really used, and this was actually my passion for science, because there were other needs and there were less needs to bring in these skills. And so it was maybe it's sometimes in life you have to be at the right place at the right time. When the position opened at the embassy, and that they were looking for a person who is heading the science and technology office. So at that time it was a position that is the attaché in science. And so they were looking for someone who speaks Japanese, who can do management, and also who has an understanding of science. And so there I was. And actually was quite, I have to say, a great opportunity to start there. But I also had to say, at the beginning I was not quite sure whether I should do it, because I said I would not like to become a bureaucrat. I rather would like to enter, but have my, private sector spirit with me, come along, and really produce results. And I think with this one, the combination to learn how to produce results and be in this environment, I think this was for me the perfect combination. And with this, I could really have some very good results at the embassy. Also could initiate and pull through a few agreements. And so this helped me afterwards to move on to Boston and also to China. So I was stationed in Shanghai to head the Swissnex. And with these basics, was a fairly good equipped also to initiate the new Swissnex in Japan and also to build it up.
So now you're CEO of Swissnex in Japan and consul of Switzerland. If we start a little bit with your consular roles, what does a consul really do? What is what are your main responsibilities within that position?
It's not a typical consul position in this sense. Of course, consulates actually, they function in the 4 typical roles that are defined by the Vienna Convention. So one is on the policy side, One is on the economic side, one is culture, but there's also science. And so in our case, we are extremely fortunate in that we can focus our energy most of our time in the science field, but we also do the other fields. Let's say around 20% of our time we use the other areas as well. So basically with this, we have a structure where we can initiate collaboration between Japan, Switzerland, and the world in the field of education, research, innovation, startups. So this is quite a very exciting field where you can actually initiate a lot, and especially science. If you think of it, science is made for collaboration, whereas the other areas, what I just mentioned, the other three areas, are also for collaboration, but it might be more difficult. Yeah.
So it's really slightly different than what maybe people traditionally think of a consul. Do you sometimes see any misconceptions when people kind of talk to you about your consular roles, or are talking about the role that, or imagining that maybe a consulate is more for the policy side of things and for international relations? Exactly. How do you address this? How do you explain that it's not just this, but also the other fields, especially science?
Yes, sometimes there's a misconception in a sense from that all consulates deal with passports and visas and so on.
That was my idea too, right?
And basically, it's also true. Whereas we have in our support field, we have actually the embassy. We are not alone in Japan, and the embassy has highly professional people in the field of consular services. And we work very closely with the embassy. And for example, that's probably one of the misconceptions that all consulates really deal with all areas. But I think that's absolutely fair because it's not often that you have specialized consulates like in our case. Also in the Swiss case, we only have six of these. And these 6 are in Boston, San Francisco, Shanghai, Bangalore, Rio de Janeiro, and now very newly opened 6 months ago here in Osaka for Japan. And it's a very specialized consulate that is dealing around science. And it's not only the misperception, I think it's also, with it comes a big surprise that people afterwards look with big eyes and say, wow, there's a country that is investing so much in this field.
So let's talk about Swissnex a little bit, because this is what you have been doing for a long time now in Boston, in China, and now here in Japan. And really something new, this kind of science diplomacy in a way, or fostering collaboration, fostering international collaboration around the concept of science. Why has Switzerland kind of decided to initiate this and in a way be a pioneer, because other countries aren't really doing that so much? Maybe universities will collaborate, maybe private sector companies will collaborate, but that a government is implementing an institution to foster all these collaborations. What was the idea behind that?
Well, the driving force behind it to set up a science-driven a consulate that is focusing on innovation is a need. When you look at Switzerland, it's a landlocked country with little resources. So we don't have gold, we don't have oil, we don't have diamonds. We have brains, and we have to invest in brains. And with this comes a solid education. It's a thorough, everyone gets education in Switzerland, which drives research in one hand, but it generally drives innovation. And this is one of our products. So basically we have, when you look at Switzerland, our resource is innovation. And so that's why it's quite obvious that we use the angles which brings this worldwide to promote what comes out of Switzerland, and even bring it on a next level, on a higher level with a strong collaboration around the world.
Now, opening up Swissnex in Japan was also kind of something new. It's the latest that opened up from all the 6 Swissnex locations now, but you've worked at 2 others. Have you noticed now differences between how science is used, discussed in the United States, how innovation is driven in China, and now what you're trying to develop here in Japan?
Obviously, I mean, every country has differences. How it's built up, how the societies function. I think most important is to experience the mix, to learn from all the locations. I would not say that one location is better or different, of course different from each other, but I think it's in each location is extremely intriguing to see how collaboration is fostered, and basically you learn from it. And of course, when you go from one location to the next location, you try to implement the best learnings, and this is exactly what happened here in Osaka for Japan. So when you look in Boston, I mean, the Swissnex is situated between Harvard and MIT, so it's in this sense quite an ideal place. I mean, really to test new forms, to bring in delegations, and to see what new formats can develop from this. Same in China, you have an attitude there of how to say, pragmatism, that you simply try things, new things, and then you question: is it? Should we do it? So it's a pragmatism that I haven't experienced beforehand, for example. And here in Japan, you suddenly experience an extremely high level of quality, again in a different way, omnipresent quality. So I think it's wherever you go, you have you have elements that are extremely useful for your activities, but on the other hand, you also have elements where you've already have seen solutions in other locations and you try to apply it. But I have to say honestly, most important is not to fear to make mistakes. And I think you have to be brave enough and to test new formats. And I mean, every location I always tried new formats. Sometimes it fails, but the good thing is you learn from failure.
So how was it with the opening of Swissnex in Japan? How long does it take to open this kind of Swissnex location from the moment it's decided, okay, we're going to open a new location in Osaka, for example, and then maybe you need to find the location, you need to build a team, but then I imagine as well you have the initiative from the Swiss government to foster collaboration, but then you also need to find a lot of local partners. You need to find people that are responsive and that are willing to collaborate as well. So how was this process of opening Swissnex in Osaka?
Well, I'm extremely grateful that I could transition from Boston through China to Japan, because when you hit the ground running. So you do not really start from zero. So that's one thing what needs to be kept in mind, because then it was very clear that you have to start building up the network while finding a location, while actually see what are the strong points in the country, in the region where you're in. So basically it was very clear, I mean, to connect with the government side very quickly, as good as possible, with the city of Osaka, with the government of Osaka and the prefectures in the Kansai region. Then the next level is really to connect with universities, but not only the universities, also research institutes, and very close with that also with the industry, because the industry around here is tech driven, which fits perfectly in our mission, And so this was also just on the network side, but we also had the chance, and this was during the COVID time, that you had the possibility to look for different locations, and you could taking past experiences into account and also see the other Swissnexes to see how would you position a new Swissnex in an ideal environment and where. And so actually we were extremely lucky that the location opened at Midosuchi, which is the 5th Avenue of Osaka.
Yeah.
And when this opportunity opened, we were blown away that this is possible, because Japan is also an extremely safe country. So that means we can have a display to a main road and have a window to Switzerland. And when you see it, when you see and think about this concept, it became extremely clear that this is the ideal location. And then, of course, absolute key is to build up the team, to find the best people you can envision to form actually the backbone of this new Swissnex, because it's all about the team. And this also extremely grateful to be blessed with a very, very nice and active and forward-moving team.
So it's not necessarily a step-by-step process, as in one after the other, but you need to do a little bit of everything at the same time and kind of coordinate for it to all come together at one point.
Of course, it's like a big snowblower, and you move forward. So it was absolutely fascinating. Yes.
You said that the one in Boston is located between Harvard and MIT, which makes it an ideal location for science. What made Osaka such a good location for you?
So Osaka is traditionally, together with Kyoto, the cradle of innovation in Japan. So when you look back, Osaka was the oldest city, one of the oldest cities in Japan. Also, when you look at Kyoto, what really built up in the past. It's kind of a given that a lot has happened and is happening in this region. Of course, these days it's the universities, so you need to have strong universities close by, with Osaka University, with Kyoto University. But you also need to have research institutes. And just around the corner, you have the fastest computer in the world. It was, I think until last year, it was ranked the number 1 fastest computer in the world. Fugaku, it's in Kobe. It's just around the corner.
Yeah, just a quick train ride away.
Yes, it's and then you go a little bit further and you have the largest research infrastructure in Japan with Spring 8, which is a synchrotron, and you also have the XFEL, which is which is a 400-meter long research device. You have fantastic infrastructure just around the corner, and not to forget, most Nobel laureates come from this region. They come from the Kansai region. When you look at the statistics, yes.
Oh, I didn't know that fact. Interesting. So Osaka, perfect location. You found the perfect location physically as well, with where you've opened up your consulate, your Swissnex consulate on the Midosuchi. And then it opens, and you have a few partners. You have the government involved, local government, and you have university partners. How was the reaction from those local partners to welcome the Swiss consulate here and to start making this collaboration?
I only can say, wow. So this is what we frequently heard from the local government. First of all, they were very happy that we opened a consulate. But once they realized it's not just a consulate, but it's a science consulate that actually is investing on a daily basis in science-driven innovation, they slowly grasp actually what's all behind it, because what we do is we look into the future, we look into trends, we bring startups almost on a daily basis. So it was kind of unheard of. It's suddenly there's a new consulate that actually is moving into the future. Actually, we work on future-oriented fields.
Boston in the United States, Shanghai in China, and now Osaka in Japan. Each country is dealing with its own challenges and it's looking for its own kind of futuristic solutions. When you started engaging with local partners here, where have you seen was their focus in terms of innovation? Do you see specific areas of technologies or specific problems that there's more research done on, whether it's agricultural fields, medical fields, or was there something unique that surprised you about where the innovation and research is here in Japan?
In general, it's always linked with the industry. So Osaka, same as in Switzerland, for example, we are extremely strong in life science. So basically in the Osaka region, it started with a medical. So this has a very a strong basis here. Other than that, I would say Osaka is blessed with a lot of SMEs. So that means it's called monotsukuri. They do a lot of manufacturing in this region. Mm-hmm. So basically, from what I have seen, almost all fields are present here. I can give you one example. Kobe, for example, has a cluster for hydrogen. So when you think of it, hydrogen, Japan was also one of the first countries that produced a car in how do you call this, in series production. Mm-hmm. That it comes from production lines that is actually fueled by hydrogen. And for this you need a hydrogen fueling station. And the first is in Amagasaki. Okay. So it's just around the corner, so it's maybe half an hour drive from here. And with this, there's a big cluster that now serves to actually, in the hydrogen field, to master the supply chain. And one example is, for example, they bring hydrogen from Australia. It's produced in Australia, so it's blue hydrogen. They work on the production on hydrogen, of course, to make it green. But what they wanted to test is how can you transport hydrogen from one continent to another continent? And for example, Japan now succeeded this. For us, I mean, that's only one example, but it's also extremely interesting to know that it's just around the corner. And whenever you have a startup coming from Switzerland or industry coming from Switzerland, you know exactly where to plug in, who to contact, and who to actually trigger if you want to initiate a collaboration.
Is that one of your roles now, to kind of connect Swiss startups with industry here in Japan in like related fields?
Absolutely. So this is one of the main roles. At the moment, I have to say it's thriving. I mean, only last year, my team actually had requests from 60 startups back in Switzerland. Wow. Who are really interested to learn more about Japan, how to set up activities in Japan, to build up business, to have a market expansion into Japan for their activities. And definitely for this, it's extremely important. When you have a startup, usually you have a product and you want to sell the product. And you need to have a link to the industry. You need to have a kind of a credibility where the industry also understands what you bring as a startup, what you offer. And that's also one thing that struck me when I came to Japan. And I think I mentioned it at the beginning, is the level of quality. Because the standard in Japan, and especially also in the companies, is extremely high. So then when the companies here look at startups, they have often a very high expectation as well. And so when you look at the quality of startups back in Switzerland, the level is also extremely high, because most, or actually all the startups what we support are deep tech startups. And it's a perfect match in a way to bring them together. So yeah, I mean, in a way we are almost like in a paradise where we have an excellent match of what we can offer, but also on the other side, of the company side that in Japan it's also well known that there is the companies have cash and also look for innovation, and so we can meet this demand.
You mentioned that the companies here in Japan have very high expectations when it comes to startups. And we've had the chance to interview a few startup founders from the Kansai area, but also Tokyo here that mention it's sometimes difficult to start a company here in Japan, a new company, and maybe more difficult when compared to the United States that has this very strong startup culture. How do you see those challenges for starting a company or for the market entry for those potential Swiss startups coming to Japan? What are the biggest challenges at the moment that people need to be aware of, maybe if they want to establish themselves here in Japan?
Maybe biggest challenge is patience at the beginning, that actually does not go as quick as maybe in other countries. But on the other hand, once it's established, it runs for decades. So that's the usual saying. At the beginning, it's a little bit tough to get in, but once you're in, it really runs by itself. We try to accelerate this a little bit. So the first difficult moments, so by having links to the companies, also to build the trust in this regard, to see what are the forms to communicate with the companies to better introduce the startups. So basically, we try to establish a landing pad that links to the companies. So actually to soften the landing in Japan and maybe accelerate through our wait to be a Swissnex in Japan, also that we are kind of a trusted source also for the companies, that the companies can come back to us and, for example, say, look, Felix, and please, your team, if you have something in this field, like a drone company or a company that is in robotics for any kind of wishes from the companies, we can go back and search maybe for the best solutions and present. And this sometimes happens.
So in a way, Swissnex becomes this sort of a seal of trust, or like a seal of quality that bridges the gap between the international world, or maybe in this case specifically Switzerland and Japan, where when the companies struggle to trust a complete foreign entity at first, and by foreign entity I don't mean necessarily foreign from outside of Japan, but just something new, you will vet this new entity first and basically give it a seal so the trust is established faster between the startup and maybe the industry.
Yes, I mean, that's absolutely correct. So we are not the one who is vetting, because at the end, that's the company that has to decide whether the startup fits or not, and can have maybe the products what they need. But what we definitely do is building the bridge. So we're the bridge builder in this regard, also to show that actually the quality behind it is on a level actually that the company expects. And we are also extremely fortunate that we have extremely strong, universities that produce these startups back in Switzerland.
Like ETH in Zurich?
ETH or EPFL or many other universities in Switzerland that have a very strong basis. And the students, they learn in the universities how to create, how to build their startups. So it's a DNA. So the entrepreneurship virus is implanted. So they have already the right DNA, but it's a part of the curriculum at university. So for the students, it's not unusual to start during their studies or after their studies to work for startups. It's quite common. And when you can show that actually the universities have an extremely high level in the rankings, and you are able to explain this to the companies or also to the VCs and other investors in Japan. So suddenly they understand actually it's a solid basis where the startups come from. And maybe the most surprising effect is that the survival rate of Swiss startups is in average. So the first 5 years that a startup survives is 80%.
That's really long. Usually I would expect a lot to maybe fail after the first or second year, but
Yes.
80% survival over 5 years. It's a big achievement.
Maybe only a very quick remark to this. The Japanese are very risk averse. So that means also to invest money into a startup, it takes maybe a little bit longer, but when you come with startups that have an extremely high survival rate, it breaks down the barrier. And so it literally helps us to position the startups much better in Japan.
To get to that point, you were saying a few moments ago that you need to find new ways of communicating with the industry, communicating with local governments, to build those relationships so that they actually come back to you and ask for help to find maybe potential partners. How do you handle the communication here in Japan that is maybe different than you had to when you were in China or in the United States?
Yes, it's similar. For example, Swissnex has a lot of events, for example. And so we try to have events in different fields. Just yesterday we had one event that was on art quantum. So art science, but specifically in the quantum field. And we had an audience that actually was very much interested to learn more about quantum, and we were able to connect it throughout. So actually we had a concert. And so this is just one example that we want to deliver to our community very high-level events, with content-wise, very high-level events. So it's a kind of a trust-building process that actually with this we can address audiences with up-to-date, with trendy topics, and more and more the audience realizes actually there's more behind Switzerland than the common stereotypes.
Watches, banks, and chocolate.
And this is what you say, but it goes in that direction, which is absolutely fair, because we also present this during our events. But there's more behind it, and that's, for example, also something that we communicate at the Expo. And
coming up next year.
Which is next year. And with this, I think every country tries to surprise the audience. And also in our case, obviously we are here to show new aspects, interesting, surprising aspects. And so that's, as you asked at the beginning, I think it's the most important that you continue the dialogue, because in Japan you cannot meet a person only once. You have to meet a few times and to win a trust. And so this is what we do through events. This is what we also do. For example, we give also a lot of interviews to media. We go out, meet universities. So, for example, last year I met something like 20 universities. Companies really go out and meet, and also invite the people who I meet back to our consulate when we have an interesting event that has a match, and it's trust building.
So the events are actually, the idea behind it is really to bring the people to you in a way, to provide value, to provide interesting opportunities, not only to meet people, but to learn about a topic like the event yesterday, which I actually had the chance to attend, which was very interesting, about quantum physics, but through the lens of music, which is quite original. And what I've seen as well is it seems a lot of the Japanese audience was very interested in this new approach, which also seemed to have surprised many that it was possible to kind of look at a very complex scientific field through a different lens. And so you bring the people to you in a way, to your home, to Switzerland, in this consulate space that you have in Osaka. And that worked regardless of the culture. It works here in Japan, obviously, but also the same is used in China and in the United States.
Yes, we have exactly the same concept. I think it's good to create a home, a kind of where people feel at home as well. But you also can deliver interesting content. And with this, I think it's a kind of a win-win situation. I mean, here we are also a little bit blessed because we have actually this infrastructure, which you experienced yesterday, that we can fully deploy to make it even more immersive and full of experience. But also, for example, in Boston, we have exactly a similar location where you walk in easily and you feel extremely welcomed. So it's very warm inside. Same as in our space, we have a lot of wood when you come in, so it's warm. So I think hospitality also plays a very important role, which is obviously also something what you can experience in Switzerland at the hospitality schools, for example.
Yes.
So it's a kind of something that is built in the hospitality that comes with it. On the other hand, I also have to say, I mean, you also have to provide interesting content. I think if it's getting too repetitive, there's not a surprise effect anymore because people usually come because they also want to learn something new.
So building relationships in Japan takes time, and it's something that is done by repeating contacts. You go to them, they come to you. And you mentioned how you were going to the universities and then inviting them back to the events, and same with the industry. How is it like working with the local government that is also one of the strong partners of Swissnex?
Yes, right when we started, we visited the local governments and we were readily welcomed. So, of course, I mean, in Japan, and maybe that's something very special, it's really top-down, whatever you do. It's not only the governments, it's also the wherever it's really top-down. And I think one of the key was really to, maybe also as a function as a consul, to start from top and really try to figure out which sections, which departments really are in line with your activities. For example, in the city of Osaka, there's one section that is responsible for education. And we very quickly found out that actually they had a very, very nice program to send every year 10 high schoolers to Switzerland. And for us, it was when we got to know this a big surprise, because this was established something like 20 years ago.
Oh, it's a long time running.
And even a Swiss organization behind it, but we learned it through our visit to the city, that actually this program exists. And it was so wonderful when meeting the young talents. And they all speak English. They have, how do you call this, a homestay for 2 weeks in Switzerland. And actually they already got a touch of Swiss life in their very young time when they were high school student, and this really stays. They remember this, and I still remember this when I met the students, the 10 students. It was wonderful because everyone came around, said some Swiss greetings like Grüezi, Bonjour, and it was absolutely amazing. And this only, it's only one example. Of course, you have next to the education side, you also have startup support organizations like JETRO, for example. It's also part of the government, and you see they are delegated from Tokyo, from the central government to the regions to support this startup development, and also they are extremely helpful. So I think the government itself does a lot. But most important is you have to be able to recognize it. I mean, who does what, and also recognize that many things are simply top-down.
Is it something challenging at first when one is not so familiar with Japanese culture and the way the society is structured, to kind of find who's responsible for what? Who do I actually need to talk to if I want to get something done?
Yes, I call this navigating. Navigating through the opportunities, because of course at the beginning it's a little bit complicated to understand how is the structure, but once you know a few key people, they can give you guidance. And so I think this is also like everywhere where you are. If you have a few key persons who actually are friends of Switzerland, in this regard, they give you the right hints, but you have to have an endeavor to build this network, of course.
In this situation, is being in the role of the consul of Switzerland and kind of being backed in a way by a government of a well-respected country a big advantage to kind of open the door and build those relationships, as opposed to, for example, if someone were to try to build this kind of network from the bottom up?
Well, it's an acceleration. I think everyone gets there, but having a whole country in the background that supports you to drive forward this activity, of course, it gives you more weight and accelerates this process. I think it also really helps, for example, to approach companies. I mean, it's of course it's not always very easy to meet the president or the chairman, but in many cases it's possible. But you also have to bring something with you. Mm-hmm. So I think it's like everywhere. I mean, when you have in the United States a meeting, let's say with a CEO, you have maybe 2-3 minutes where you can have the opportunity to make the point. And then it decides whether it goes, you continue or it's the end. So also in Japan, maybe you have a little more time, but at the end you also have to present value. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is the key. So basically at the end, it's like whatever you do, you have to be able to present the value, present an opportunity so that it continues. Otherwise there's no point to meet, of course.
A lot of what we talked about until now is centered about diplomacy, communication, building relationships. And at the core of all of this is language. Oh. And Japanese language is not an easy one. And I'm curious about how it is for you to use Japanese and communicate and bridge all these gaps with potential partners in Japanese. But also maybe we were talking, for example, earlier about Swiss startups willing to come to Japan, but that may not have any prior contact to Japan, not any knowledge of Japanese language. How is this language barrier bridged?
Yes, I have to say Japanese language, and there are many rankings. It's ranked among the most difficult languages in the world. But also the Japanese know that it's a very difficult language, and they would never expect from a foreign person to have the same level, of course. I think more important is that you bring your respect with you, that you try maybe to have a minimum, some basic, I should not even say basic Japanese, but maybe really a few words in Japanese. But be patient to talk with the Japanese person who you would like to communicate. You can communicate in English, but you have to speak slowly. So you should not expect to be able and absolutely fluent in English, but really slowly, and you get a reply as well. I think the language is a challenge. It definitely helps. I mean, when you come from abroad, to have maybe at the beginning a friend, an interpreter, to help you at the beginning to navigate. Mm-hmm. If you're a startup, definitely it's recommended to build up with Japanese staff if you want to set up in Japan, because at the end, let's be fair. I mean, you cannot use too much time in order to build up your operations. You also have to do it. You have to have some speed, and whatever you want to speed up, whatever, you need to have the right people. I mean, it's like when you have to do in a company HR, you have to do accounting, or you have to do communication. You need to have the people if you really want to speed it up, that you can produce something in this regard. So language is it's a tool, and it's a tool to have things done. But I give you absolutely right, it's not the easiest language, but it's not impossible to learn it. So even now I'm learning on a daily basis.
Yeah.
On a daily
Never
basis,
stops.
Japanese.
And then initiatives like you were mentioning before from the Osaka government, for example, to send young students at a very young age overseas are great because they have the contact with Switzerland, but also you said they were already speaking a good level of English. And so that young age translates into future innovators maybe in the next generation. So coming back to Swissnex, it's opened for about 6 months, just over 6 months, I believe, here in Osaka now. And you've already done a lot of Next Cafe events, a lot of partnerships being built. What are the goals now for the maybe next 6 months, but also maybe looking beyond into the future? What are you trying to establish over the years here?
Yeah. It's very simple to answer because in the next, let's say 1 year, one very big event is happening. It's the Expo 2025, so the World Expo. And with this, we have something remarkable coming to the Osaka region here in Japan. It's something that I think the region and all Japan is really looking forward very much to it, and this definitely will keep us extremely busy because during that 6 months, and it's not only these 6 months, but even in the preparation phase and even afterwards, we have a lot of delegations coming from Switzerland with great projects, or we only have the projects coming along that are exhibited at the Swiss Pavilion at the Expo, but not only at the Swiss Pavilion, because we, with our entity Swissnex, that is located at the Midosuchi, we already have something downtown. And so what we do now, and it's accelerating now, we work on it, how to connect our location in tandem with the Swiss Pavilion, that we really can maximize the impact. So this also means when interesting projects come to the pavilion, we can actually have with this also events at Swissnex and vice versa. So basically we profit from each other, and we really try to get it on the next level. So the whole team is very much looking forward to it because we have a long list of projects, a long list of possibilities, and that are being exhibited at the Swiss Pavilion. And of course, we are extremely keen also to have a part of it at our place as well. 2 pavilions in a way, right? I also see it like this. I mean, it's a double punch in this way. You have in this sense the pavilion at the Expo, but you always have also the possibility to do something in town. So that's I think really a double opportunity, and that is being offered. Are you already thinking beyond the Expo next year, or is it for now kind of really? I mean, obviously it's the main event coming up soon, but I imagine that the decision to establish Swissnex in Osaka is not something that was done for let's do this for 5 years and stop, but more like let's build something for the next few decades. Yes, it's a long-term endeavor. For example, the one in Boston was created in the year 2000 as the first science consulate in the world. And so we are the first science consulate in Japan. And of course, I mean, with this comes also expectation, also from the Swiss government, there's an expectation So for us, it's very important to build up collaborations, interesting collaborations, meaningful collaborations, and that are adding value. So we have, at the moment, we have three themes that are startups, aging, and sustainability. So we kept themes like sustainability broad, also with the purpose that we can move in this field. Also aging can be quite broad, and especially aging, I think it's quite unique for Japan because it's the most aged society in the world, with all the lessons learned with the experiences. And I think every nation can learn a lot from Japan, but we also can contribute a lot. So having said this, we have these three areas, but of course, I mean, we have to see, maybe even after the World Expo, there might be something really mind-blowing coming out and say, look, now we discuss among the Swissnexes now about planetary boundaries, because we see that the planet in many ways is at the limit. And we cannot continue like this in the future. And so that's also something that we more and more want to implement in our activities, that we give a message, also this sense that we have to be really careful with our planet, because that's the only thing that we have. So if something really goes wrong, I mean, it goes in the wrong direction. And so it might be that our themes adjust by this. But of course, since we look into trend fields like quantum computing, space tech, AI, robotics, you name it, so we also have to see that we are ready to adjust while we move forward. And most important is whenever you find a way to add value, it will continue.
So remaining agile, adapting to the world's challenges. But you also mentioned something interesting that you discuss among the Swissnex. So are you working together a lot? Is it really a tight network of Swissnex that you collaborate with, the one in Brazil, with the one in China, and then kind of bring those discussions that you have within to your locations and try to bring more people into the conversation? Or are you relatively independent still in your actions with Swissnex?
I think you bring up a very important point, because we are called the Swissnex network. So that means we are a network of the 6 larger Swissnexes, and that are consulates with a focus on science. But we also have science offices and science counselors in embassies. So we have roughly 20.
Wow.
So in total, we are all around the world, and we meet regularly back in Switzerland, where we discuss, well, regularly means once a year at the annual meeting, where we also try to set a focus how to move forward in the future. So as just mentioned, the last annual meeting main focus was on planetary boundaries, and we identified this as a field to move forward. And of course, I mean, having this theme, we also collaborate among each other to see if we can leverage each other's activities. And of course, I mean, we have discussions with our direct neighbors. So my closest neighbor is the Swissnex China, which is located in Shanghai, or on the other side of the pond in San Francisco. So these are the closest neighbors, so to say. And so we, every 2 months we have calls where we adjust, discuss, fine-tune activities, and sometimes they are really good projects and that is successful in one location that is ready to be also replicated or done in another location.
Looking back on your personal experience now in Japan, you first came for an internship, came back to do research. And then you left Japan as well for a while after working in the industry here to explore the United States, to explore China, and came back. How was everything, or what has changed perhaps during your experience here with Japan?
So if I understand, the question is my first moment I came to Japan until now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm deeply impressed that actually Japan is it's very stable in a way in terms of safetiness. Because I think already this is quite unique.
It is.
That you have a country that over such a long period of time has basically, it's a very safe country. And also the level, as I mentioned before, the quality level, the sense of, basically it's an expectation that the quality is here.
Mm-hmm.
And this drives the quality level. So I'm very surprised since the beginning I arrived until now, it's kind of unchanged. And then, as you said, you also ask yourself, okay, what has changed? So I think on one hand, maybe the aging population, you sense it a little bit. But also what I really admire is that also, even though the population is aging, they are contributing. And this is remarkable, I think. When you see, for example, that the population is aging, but they are fit. How to explain this in an easy way? Of course, they are getting older, but they stay fit.
You stay in good health.
In good health in many ways. So, for example, when I go to the gym, there are many old people in the gym, but they are really fit. And this is also something what I've seen that really changed. That this was not the case when I first time arrived, which is now. And it's a kind of omnipresent, but it's at a very fit level in a way. Other things maybe didn't change so much. For example, it's still, the processes are still complicated. So my hope would have been that a few things get easier. Just to give the example, Japan is still using fax machines.
It is true. They're still using them. It's more common than we would think. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is, for me, this was a little bit surprising when you go around the world. It's less and less, of course, the fax. But on the other hand, you see that new trends are taken up, as mentioned before, with a hydrogen car and so on. Now with the Expo, we see many, many new ways what will be implemented, like a drone taxi or many other technologies will be implemented. So I think the passion for new things is omnipresent. So it is here. But I have to say the most fascinating is maybe the people. Because with the people, it's you can always have good communication, good conversations, and it's extremely the curiosity is always here to learn and to understand and also to contribute. So I think this is absolutely unchanged in this regard.
I thought your answer was very nice and very interesting because you first talked about things you noticed were unchanged but were very positive, such as the safety and the quality standards, because we feel like we constantly live in a changing world and everything around us is never the same when you look back after 2 days, and that there's this constant in Japan seems to be a kind of very comforting feeling for people that come here and that come back again or decide to live. So that was very nice to hear actually. And I'm moving closer to the end of our conversation, but I was wondering maybe for all the people that are listening, some may be interested in entering a role in diplomacy. Some of them may be entrepreneurs that are interested in working with Swissnex. What kind of advice would you like to give people that are interested in making something here in Japan?
Most important is to stay open and to stay flexible. So I think in any case, whatever you do, I think this is a kind of a prerequisite. And of course, on the other hand, also to give some patience. Everything can change from one day to the other. You have to give it a little bit time to grow. But from my perspective, the most important is curiosity. Whatever you go, in whatever field you go, you really have to, also in the diplomacy, you have to watch it. You have to, combine it with the industry, private sector, to combine it with the public sector, also with academia, and really to observe and see opportunities which you can grasp and really to bring on the next level. And so this is basically how I function every day. Morning, wake up, you go out with not with a fear, but let's say, what do we try today? Even though it might not work at the beginning, but at least you try maybe something new. And if it's a failure, you learn something from it, but you get better and better, and you will succeed next time. So I think most important is not to fear to make mistakes, and to have a large portion of curiosity.
Be open, be patient, don't fear mistakes, and stay curious.
Yes.
And if those are gone, innovation stops.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Felix Moesner.
Thank you.
Is there something that we maybe haven't covered today that you would have liked to share with us about the work of Swissnex, about your experience in Japan? I know we covered a lot of topics already, but if there is something that you still have in mind that you would have liked to mention, maybe now is an opportunity. If there's nothing, we can also leave it at this.
I would really like to invite everyone, please have a chance, come around. Please visit us at Swissnex. We always have an open door. We have chocolate, coffee. Please come around, have a good discussion, and exchange vision, exchange ideas. So for us, it's very important to bring knowledge, ideas, and talent together. So we are extremely happy and welcoming. So please come and visit us.
We will make sure to link everything down in the description below, so people can find the location on the Midosuji Avenue and also where to see the upcoming events and how to stay in touch with Swissnex and with you directly on LinkedIn, perhaps.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we will be back next week. Bye. Are you looking for another podcast episode to listen to next? If you like the one you just listened to, I'm sure you'll also enjoy the one that I've selected and linked in the description down below. Go check it out.